I know you are all probably seen me. Many of you have already told me that, and I want to keep it short on the presentation end because I know there's a lot of questions and people do have prior engagements they have to get to. So I'm going to give a real quick presentation and allow you guys to answer the questions. What I'd like to start off with is water and how important it is, and the difference between good water and what we call not so good water. Water in nature, as you all would know, is best when it comes out of a spring. And I'm sure everybody here has heard of artesian spring, but most of you probably don't know what artesian means. It simply means mineral content. And if the mineral content is higher, it can be called artesian. Once that mineral content drops down below, you can no longer call it artesian. So what we look for the best waters is this artesian water. And this means that it has plenty of minerals that the body needs, and they're in the right state that the body needs them. What I did in the beginning when I first started with this over 7 years ago is I started to research, well, what's good water in nature and what type of minerals, because obviously I'm delivered a bottle of minerals and I'm saying sulfate. Most people say, oh, isn't a battery, a car battery, sulfuric acid, or what's going on with this? So when I did this research, and one of the examples I always give, and I encourage all of you to research this, is Excelsior Springs, Missouri. In the late 1800s, they actually won an award for the world's best water. And this was based on 21 springs coming to one spot, and the mineral content in which came into those springs. Two of these springs, and they noted, if you look up the article, and I'll spell that for you, Excelsior, Excelsior. Wait, I think I spelled that wrong. Excelsior, that's it. Excelsior Springs. And two of these springs were the only 2 out of 6 known springs in the world, ferric iron. So I want to touch on that because a lot of people look at the iron and they go, oh, it has iron. Remember, all of these minerals are sulfates, which mean they're dissolved ionic. They're actually a part of the water. They're not solids. They're not minerals that cannot make it into your cells. They actually go right into cells. In fact, what Japan has given us information that if you sit in a bath of this water, the minerals will penetrate right to your bone marrow just by sitting in the water. In Excelsior Springs, Missouri today, it's like a ghost town because there's only 1 out of those 21 springs that are open today, which gives us an idea of what is happening to our spring water. It's quickly fading away, meaning we can't get these minerals in our water anymore because as soon as those minerals are gone, the bacteria come in. Most of this is due to the mining and what they're doing to the earth, but also what they're dumping back into the earth. I don't want to get into that because so if you went to Excelsior Springs, Missouri, what you would notice, they have a sanitarium. They don't use it anymore, but they still have it there. You go on the bottom floor, there's literally tubs, and they have different sized tubs. Small people, bigger people. So based on the size of the person, based on the size of the tub. But they would just sit in this water all day. And they would come from all over the world. In fact, Edgar Cayce, if anybody's ever heard of him, he used to send people there. Specifically send people there by the droves, and the whole world started to find. They actually have one of those vaults in the historical bank there that's like the old vault you see in the Western movie, real fancy with a big gold wheel. That's what's there because of how many people would come from all over the world. And so they actually used to sit people in this, spray them in these rooms, and there's all kinds of miracle stories about how many different healing modalities they would receive from this water alone. They would bathe in it and drink it, and that's all they would do. There was no other protocol. Now, when you're actually looking at these 2 springs, specifically the ferric iron ones, a lot of people don't understand the difference between one iron and another iron. Your blood, especially the mitochondria of your red blood cells, has ferric iron and sulfur in the center. Plant walls have ferric iron and sulfur in the plant walls. Animals, same thing. So there's something to this. Now, what I refer to this as is the iron is the striking plate and the sulfur is the match. And you have your cell. Now, based on what I've seen is your cell can't be hydrated, your cell can't absorb the nutrition unless it has this in its right ratio. So you won't even see healthy blood cells. You'll see cells that are all clumped together because they're lacking oxygen. These are the ions that they need in order to receive the water inside the cells. So when people look at the iron on our product, I want you to know that's the form that it's in, the form that it was in those springs. Now, there was only 2 of 6 known in the world at the time. This is the late 1800s. Gone. Gone. This important thing that we had when we came here is gone. Mount Clemens, Michigan was known as a sulfur healing. Around the same time, people would come from all over the world. You could smell the sulfur in the air. People would come and sit in these springs and get healed. Gone. Doesn't even exist. You can't even smell the sulfur in the air anymore. So what does this mean? Now you've all been told when you're at school, oh, well, the minerals in the soils in the 50s are 10 times less than in the early 1900s. So where are we at now? So this is a very important fact that I'm pointing out to you so you understand where the source was, why we don't have it anymore. And then also people don't realize rainwater. A lot of people say, well, if I drink distilled water, that's like drinking rainwater. No. There is no water on this planet that does not have minerals unless it is sick, dirty, and nasty water. Now, for those of you that have ionizers and have been following an alkaline water protocol, not the answer. If you go in nature, you will find, this is that question I ask every single person to help demonstrate how serious this is. If I took you into nature and I showed you freshwater fish, plants, and animals that are dying from the water, and I said, would you drink that water? And the answer is always no. It's never yes. I could never find a person even that sells alkaline machines say yes. So then I say, did you know if you gave 8 pH water to plants, they'll turn yellow in 3 days? Your fish won't even live overnight. They'll be dead in the morning when you wake up. Is that the water you want to drink? And then they tell you, oh, well, we're going to charge up the minerals that are already, the good minerals that are already in your water. Can anybody here name good minerals that are in tap water? No. So why would you want to charge what's not good? Plus, these filter systems that we have on our house, now reverse osmosis is not a filter system, it's a process. So we're not going to talk about that right now. We'll discuss that. Reverse osmosis and distill, just so you know, works just like alkaline water when it comes to fish and plants. You'll kill them right away. So when you look at the filters that you buy, even the expensive house filters, they can remove these more solid particles, but they cannot get rid of the dissolved ions, the ones that are actually a part of the water and actually structured with the water. This is very important because these things make it into your cells. They're what go into your nervous system. Anything that's dissolved in ionic can penetrate right through the cell membrane and absorb right into the nervous system. So when you're not filtering those things out, you're actually left with the most harmful things. So your body's actually absorbing the things that you shouldn't be absorbing. Now, one of the key things about our minerals, and a lot of you probably seen a lot about this online, is the precipitation ability of our product. And what it does is it actually makes these contaminants, and I'll give you an idea. A typical tap water strand, now you can't shrink the molecule of the water. You can shrink the cluster, which is a cluster of molecules. So a typical strand of water will be about 12 to 14 molecules per cluster, and it'll look like this, kind of like a zigzag. In nature, good spring water does not have this. It has a cluster like this with about 6 molecules. That's where this idea of the 6-sided cluster came from. What our product does is it zips the stuff, because when you dissolve stuff in the water, it actually becomes a part of the cluster. It zips and it makes these dissolved contaminants. Now, the first thing you should look for in your water isn't all this chunks floating out, because that's not what's going to happen right away unless you have very, very, very dirty water, like raw sewage or third world country water. You will definitely see some crazy precipitation occurring. It zips these things that are attached to these molecules in the clusters. and it removes them and makes them insoluble. And what insoluble means versus dissolved is that it can no longer mix back in the water. So whatever you see fall out to the bottom, you can literally shake that bottle up 100 times in 5 years. It'll always fall back down to the bottom because it's no longer a part of the cluster. So when you actually get your water back, the clusters go back to their normal state. That's why we call it magnetic sulfate minerals. The ferric iron is the magnet. Does that mean we could stick a piece of steel to the bottom of the product and it's no? This is subtle magnetism. This isn't strong magnet. But in water, it's all about subtle energies when you're talking about dissolved substances. Because when you're talking about dissolved things, you can't see them. It's impossible. When they're insoluble, you can see them. Because now they're no longer dissolved in the water. They're no longer invisible. So you actually see these things precipitate down, and then as a result, you now have water that's no longer attached to these dissolved substances that can get into your nervous system. And I've actually had people say, well, that's just removing the good minerals. And once again, what good minerals are in tap water? But I also use this as a factor to help them understand and demonstrate why it's not removing the good minerals. If you go to the ocean water and you add our minerals, is it going to precipitate the salt out? No. No, it's not going to precipitate the salt out. So if that was the case, it would work on ocean water, and it does not. So my main point for everybody on good water is you want to go to nature and see, and you can do your own research. Go and look up healing springs. You go look up healing springs. There's only a few left in the world, so there's not a lot left. But when you look them up, always sulfate silicate, sulfate silicate, sulfate silicate. Well, mica is the silicate cage. Zeolite itself comes from the process of mica dissolving into the ocean. Whatever doesn't dissolve will fall like clumps of turds at the bottom of the ocean. Now these are going to collect toxins over time because that's what the aluminum silicate cage attracts. So my question would be, do you want to go to what's collecting the toxins? No. When you're looking at the springs pumping out the silicate sulfate minerals, now everybody knows when you go in nature, you have dead animals, you have feces just like you do at home, fish have feces, all animals. You also have bacteria. You also have all these different organisms that will invade our system and cause us to get sick, like E. coli. All these things grow as a byproduct and a result of this process. Well, in nature, these springs would actually precipitate all these things that were in the water. That's where that squishy, slimy stuff at the bottom of the rivers and the ponds, that's why they say fulvic acid is at the bottom of every river, stream, ocean, and lake, natural body of water. Now, from what I can see is this is the actual process of nature spitting these minerals back through the springs and causing all these things to precipitate out, fall to the ground, and over time, collecting, and it's the same color. If you look at fulvic acid, it's the same color as the ferric iron. So it's this ferric iron that actually is this huge regulator. It's the blood of the earth. I call it the blood of the earth. As it goes with water, water also becomes your blood. But when you look at the ferric iron in the medical book, for instance, in Canada, we now have our natural health product number, which has to be based on clinical trials. Of course, anybody hear of Epsom salt? Mm-hmm. You know what type of mineral that is? Well, you might say magnesium. That's not the type of mineral it is. It's a sulfate, magnesium sulfate. But if you take magnesium sulfate by itself, you now have to make sure that you give all the other minerals in the same ratio that they're supposed to be in order not to throw off your mineral balance. Because all the minerals in your body communicate to each other like a big circuitry board. So the idea is, if you go to the stone, which actually has this the way it's supposed to be in nature, you can actually get the complete matrix and not have to worry about, oh, I got to have this mineral product, oh, I got to have this and this. Today, it's just confusing. I don't take any supplements, people. Zero. I've been on this for 7 years. I just went to a doctor's earlier this week. They can't find anything wrong with me. Okay? If there's something wrong with this, you'd think they'd say, oh, you got this off, that's off, this. Nothing. My kidneys are in perfect working order. My liver's in perfect working order. My prostate's in perfect working order. The only other element that I take is the iodine, because our product does not contain the iodine. And it's important to have all of these different elements. So I actually stress to people, look into nature, do your research, because you want to confirm. You want to say, hey, Nature's telling me what's good, not science. Because for some reason, man has gotten the idea that we can do better than nature. Look at the result. Look at our water. Are we doing better than what it was when we got here? We can't manage nature. Nature should be managing us. And that's the problem we're facing today. So when you get to the relationship between water and minerals, you should always understand they're symbiotic. You cannot have one without the other. And if you do this, it's a very dangerous game you are playing. If you have migraine headaches and you're drinking distilled and reverse osmosis water, that is why you have migraine headaches. If you get bloating and cramping, you don't have enough minerals in your water. I get people saying, but I drink 2 gallons of water every day, why am I suffering? Well, what kind of minerals are in your water? Oh, I drink distilled water. Well, you can't hydrate. Your body just can't. People know that sports people would eat salt tablets to hydrate. Well, what's salt? It's minerals. But then you get people who don't understand. Just because it's a salt doesn't mean that it's sodium chloride. Doesn't mean that it's table salt. So like, I'm not allowed to have salt. Well, you should know that that means you can't have table salt, which is sodium chloride, because your sodium levels are too high. But if you get a nice balanced mineral salt, like Himalayan or something along that line, it's much different, and you're going to get different results. You're not going to throw off the balance of all the other minerals in your body. And that's why something like table salt has become a detrimental effect to our entire populace. And people are just now saying, oh, well, eliminate the salt out of your food. I'm not allowed to have... So they then believe, oh, I can't have any salt. So you tell them this is a mineral salt, and they're like, oh, I can't have salt. This is a dangerous game we're playing here. We need to go to the facts and understand what mineral salt. Salt means it's dissolved, and anybody's confused between colloidal and ionic. I'll give you a good demonstration. If you want to do this test yourself, have fun, but I would recommend not, because it's not going to be fun. You take salt and you put it in your mouth, see how long it takes to dissolve. Now go to the beach, take a handful of sand, put it in your mouth. Now let's see how long that takes to dissolve. That's the definition between colloidal and ionic. Colloidal is suspended particles in water. If you look in the Webster's dictionary, it specifically says right in Webster's dictionary, too large to pass through cell membrane. Your body is not absorbing them. They're not electrical. They're not able to communicate with your circuitry grid. Does that mean it's not going to do what it's supposed to do? Like, for instance, I was asked about the colloidal silver. Well, colloidal silver still has properties to kill bacteria because of the charge that's actually naturally in silver. That's one of the main reasons why, when you look in nature in the mines, copper and silver are pretty much always together to conduct electricity to make sure things are sterile. But now they're mining all this out, so bacteria are everywhere. But you're not supposed to have these things in the particulate size. You're supposed to have them in the ionic size, which is actually dissolved as one with the water. Symbiotic. You want your minerals to be symbiotic, meaning together as one. So that way when you drink your water, you're drinking it as a whole unit. It's not separate. It's not, well, this is my water with minerals. No, this is my mineral water. So now the water actually becomes mineral water versus water with minerals in it. So you have to understand these things in order to really know what kind of water should I be drinking. So I encourage all of you to actually go into the internet and just type in healing spring. Because what you also find is, in the history of the world, this is in the history of the world, from the beginning of time, we can find records and documentation. Water is the most healing substance on the planet. If you are not incorporating water in your health, you are not going to find full health. I guarantee you that. It's impossible. And people will ask me, well, what about my fruit juice? Is fruit juice water? Can you feed fruit juice to plants every day and expect the same results? No. So don't mistake water for fruit juice, or water for coffee, or water for soda, or water for tea. Water is water, period. Water with minerals, symbiotic. So make sure when you... And the key to that is really understanding. And everybody's hearing carbon, 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 the carbon levels. Well, food, animals, humans, we're all carbon. Mineral salts don't contain carbon. So when you're talking about Himalayan salt, there's no carbon. When you're talking about our product, there's no carbon there. So it's actually non-invasive when it comes to the carbon. It's actually doing the opposite. It's regulating the carbon waste in your body, delivering the nutrition to the cells, because minerals, two main functions. Two main functions of minerals: deliver nutrition, take away toxins. So when you're lacking in your minerals, and it doesn't matter, you missing one of those key elements, you're going to have issues somewhere in your body. In fact, Dr. Nojima, who wrote 5 books based on our minerals alone in Japan, he's been using it over 25, now 30 years in his practice. He's a retired medical doctor that said, well, I took a creed that says, if I know it works, I must use it. So when he retired, he says, I have to get what I know works. So he went all over the place looking for the right minerals. He found this specific solution, and he says, trace minerals were misnamed. They should be called gene minerals. Then he goes on to explain how, I'm sure you've all heard this. Oh, it's in my genes. I'm destined to have it. My mother had it, my grandmother, my uncle. It's genetic. So he's saying this. Your genes vibrate at the same vibration as a bee's wing. 10,000 vibrations per second. The same vibration as our minerals. And that each element represents one of your genes. And that when you're missing the minerals, as Linus Pauling said, every disease, every sickness, and every illness is due to mineral deficiency. Linus Pauling, for those of you who do not know who this is, he won 2 Nobel Peace Prizes, when it counted, way back when, for his study of the blood and minerals. So obviously he's recognized for this. But did we take his findings? Did we look at what he did? No. We said, what's wrong with me, doctor? Now, just so you know, a medical doctor has only 2 college credit hours on water and minerals. So don't expect him to teach you anything about minerals and water. Go to the naturopath. Go to the people who have been using them, and will tell you. Almost every single naturopath will tell you, minerals are the key. Minerals are the key. Minerals and water. Minerals and water. And you go get their supplements, most of them are just minerals. And they'll give you a bunch of different kind, because like I said, you say, oh, we need this one. Oh, we need that one. Oh, we need this one. But the problem is, you're going outside of the natural realm that nature would have gave you these minerals. And that's the idea here. Going to where nature. Now, the process that's used in order to make these minerals, and just so you understand how springs are formed, there's aquifers that work with the volcanoes. And I'm sure you've all heard this in school or learned it at some point. You see this picture, this diagram. Well, imagine, if anybody's been through the Midwest and seen coal mining, the coal is always on the top. You can see it cut, like as if the earth was cut as a sandwich. The coal is usually the first layer. I call that the bacterial membrane of the earth. Because we all know the coal will remove the bacteria, and it will eliminate a lot of the things that shouldn't get down to the spring, down to the aquifers. So now when you take all the coal out, now what happened in Excelsior Springs, Missouri? The springs got infested with bacteria. So they had to close them all down except one now. 1 out of 21. That's a huge ratio, folks. A huge ratio. So if you take that as the example, you can obviously then look and see. I hear people, and Laura, who's graciously put this on for everybody and organized everybody to come here today and got the word out. She said, I can't find any spring water here. You guys should be loaded with springs here, and there are none that are worthy of taking. So this is a problem. We're not addressing it. We're taking machines and we're trying to filter water that doesn't have these minerals. That's not the answer. Taking away is not the answer. In fact, that's the allopathic method. Just cut it out. Just take it away. No. In the Japanese method, it's the process of addition, not subtraction. So it's what do you add that's going to fix the problem, not what you're going to take away that's going to fix the problem. So when you think about it, you add our minerals, what does it do to the water? It's causing the dissolved contaminants that you don't want in your cells and in your nervous system to separate. Once they're insoluble, they can't get into your cells anymore. They're not dissolved. they can't pass through your cells. So now you have a water that has eliminated the majority of these things that can get into your cells, and now it's replenished with the minerals, because the minerals that stay are still dissolved as ionic minerals. So now they can get right into your cells and do what they need to do, get the oxygen into the cells. And a lot of people say, well, you can't add oxygen to water. Well, in this case, these minerals are all oxides, which means they contain extra oxygen. Like, for instance, ferric oxide is Fe2O3. So ferric oxide actually has 3 oxygen ions attached to it. So I say, you can add oxygen to water. Because if they're dissolved and they become a part of the water. Then we have a slight misunderstanding. I'm going to try to keep this short so we can get to the questions. With ORP. Anybody familiar with ORP? Anybody else? Oxygen reduction potential. Now, there's 2 charges in ORP. They call them negative and positive. And most of the time they associate that with positive being acid, negative being alkaline. And so today a lot of people are saying, you need the negative ORP, you need the negative ORP, you need the negative ORP. No. No. Because if that's the case, you shouldn't eat fruits, you shouldn't eat vegetables, and you shouldn't be alive. First of all, let's talk about acid. What is acid? Acid is the number 1 ingredient of the universe. It's the proof that life is in the universe. The sun's main ingredient, acid, hydrogen. That's why the pH of water will be affected and start to go down when it's exposed to the sunlight. Your bodies, a lot of people say, you're too acidic, you're too acidic, you're too acidic. No. You're demineralized, you're demineralized, you're demineralized. Osteoporosis, as Batman Galige would put, and you're not sick, you're thirsty, is called self-cannibalization. It's when it becomes so deficient that your body has to take from its own bones in order to provide the minerals. This isn't something that should be complicated. It should just be basic knowledge, but it's not. Our kids have no idea. So when you're actually looking at the ORP charge, I want to give you anybody know a good example of something in nature that we use on our shelves? It's on our shelves. Probably every single person has a bottle of this in their cupboard somewhere. Positive ORP. Stabilized positive ORP that's in an acid state. Vinegar. Apple cider vinegar. It's a positive ORP. It's a natural state because as fruits and vegetables ferment, they start to gain a positive ORP until they stabilize. They'll be on the shelf forever. That's electricity. In fact, all acid is bioelectricity. So I tell people, if you're trying to get rid of the acid in your body, you're trying to kill yourself. Because all acid is your body ramping up the electricity to try and get more, This will all be balanced. See, there's a balance in your body. Anybody says, oh, you got to be alkaline, you got to be alkaline. Your largest organ, your skin, is a 5.6. If you make your skin alkaline, all the oils will break down and you'll become so dry, your skin will crack and become scaly. Is that what we want? Your stomach is a 2 pH. Anybody know what happens? I'm sure some of you have probably seen this in science experiment when you were in school. When you add apple cider vinegar to baking soda. Oh, volcanic eruption. Is that what we want to do to our stomach? No. How is alkaline going to replace the minerals in your body? It doesn't. It has nothing to do with it. In fact, minerals can't even be absorbed in nature in alkaline. The only plants that grow in an alkaline soil is sagebrush. That's a toxic plant. You can't consume that. In fact, Elmer Heinrich wrote a book based on Linus Pauling's work saying, all diseases, all illnesses exist in an alkaline environment. Wow, opposite of what they're telling us today. In fact, tapeworms thrive in an alkaline environment. Tapeworms love an alkaline environment. Maybe that's why their guts keep going. So what I try to help people understand is where nature is versus where science is. Because nature's right. Nature's doing. The birds are going where they're supposed to go because nature's right. We're the ones that are off path saying, oh, killing the birds, killing the fish, killing the animals, because we're polluting their natural state, thinking that we're right, and we're 9 times out of 10 wrong. Because we're dumping things that don't belong, and we're trying to manage it our way. Adding just calcium. Oh, we got to bring the pH back up to the water to 7, so let's just add calcium. That's not the answer. Now you throw off now you have all these people that are riddled with calcium. Arthritis is worse than it's ever been. Riddled with calcium. Then you have people popping all these calcium pills. Oh, I got to have my extra calcium. And then they're the ones that have all these joint buildups of calcium in their bones, and then they get rheumatoid, which is so bad that you can see it swelling to the size of a quarter or $half size on their knuckle. So the answer is not saying, oh, well, minerals are good no matter what. No, you have to recognize, well, what's good in nature? You have to always go back there. So the process that's used to make our minerals is based on volcanoes, based on these aquifers. Aluminum silicates, which are the mica shelves. Now the black mica, the difference between black mica and the lighter colored mica is the mineral content. And if you've ever seen a volcanic eruption, the first thing most people think of is boom. That is called the felsic eruption, which is very low mineral content. Those aren't the minerals. In fact, those are rare eruptions. Those aren't the prevalent eruptions that we have on the Earth. The prevalent one is mafic eruption, which is the one that's always going on in Hawaii, the slow-moving magma. These are where the biotite, and the biotite is the scientific name for black mica. Black mica is the nickname. It's also known as, in ancient healing, like Ayurvedic medicine, in Chinese alchemy medicine, the stone of life, the stone of consciousness, the stone of the third eye, and the stone of the crown chakra. Those are the names that's been given throughout history. They would actually use this in acupuncture to put a lens over someone's third eye to help them see the truth because they're so out of whack. So this mafic eruption, as we speak, is filling in ocean gap floors as they're pulling apart. In Hawaii, the largest volcano by landmass on the Earth is constantly spewing this out. No wonder why Hawaii is so beautiful, even though it's riddled with tourism. Because these mafic eruptions are replenishing the water. And they still have good water in Hawaii because it's constantly being replenished. Unfortunately, we don't have that volcano spewing all over the planet. In places like Yellowstone, it's happening, but because of our distance from it and our pollution levels, and because the aquifers aren't working with this anymore, being able to replenish and send up, the bacteria and the contaminants are making it to the aquifers, everything gets neutralized at source, so by the time the water makes it to the top, it's not fresh. It's no longer got the content. And just so you know, when you add our minerals to water, the reason why you have to add more to water that's worse is because as you add it to the water, some of the minerals are burned up in the process, neutralizing these contaminants. And that's what's sinking down in the matrix. That's where fulvic acid comes from, this process. That's why fulvic acid is full of all kinds of minerals, mostly ferric iron. So just understanding this alone will help you see where this is occurring. Now Shimonishi, how he discovered this, they call him Shimonishi Sensei. He's literally the authority on water. A lot of people think, well, what about the guy that invented the ionizer in Japan? Well, you don't want to know that. If you invested in an ionizer, the guy who invented the ionizer in Japan already said, don't use this. It's not the answer. Now he sells a hydrogen stick with magnesium sulfate in it. So if the guy that invented it is telling you, no, then they tell you this trick. Well, they use it in the Japanese hospitals, but they didn't tell you they just use it to clean the floors. They don't give it to their patients. Is that what we want, a cleaner? So one more thing on the alkaline before I let this go, because it's very important. They teach you this alkaline. Why in nature? Why can't fish live in alkaline water? Now, if anybody's been in nature and freshwater fish and actually grabbed one or touched one, they're very slimy. And you're told, that's the protective oil. That's the protective coating on fish. So what happens when the alkaline goes up, you create what's called an emulsifier. Breast milk is one of the best example for an emulsified substance. So your body actually, your bile is alkaline in your digestive system, and usually it's about a 12, which breaks down the oils and fats in your body. If you're producing bile, there's no reason for you to have anything alkaline, because that's plenty alkaline enough. So that it breaks down these fats and turns them into a liquid substance so they can be absorbed. So they tell you, oh, well, don't give it to your fish, don't put it on your skin, but drink it. Why can't plants survive alkaline? Plants have protective oils. So do we. So why would you want to take something that's going to break down the oils in your body and emulsify them? You don't. You do not want to do this. It doesn't happen in nature. It shouldn't happen with you. And some people say, well, what about springs? Well, we already know springs are off. And anybody that's researched Victor Schauberger or any of these people that have studied these water mechanisms in nature knows that a good spring, a good healthy spring, should be between 6.5 and 6.9 pH. And it just so happens fish, freshwater fish, cannot breed in water. Very difficult to breed fish unless the pH is between 6.5 and 6.9. Soils, in order to grow crops, need to be between 6.5 and 6.9 to get the best results. The number one ingredient sold in the world today for agricultural purposes is sulfuric acid. Because in order for the minerals to be absorbed, it has to be an acid. That's why your body ramps up the acid. Any questions?
Are you suggesting that you start with reverse osmosis water, or are you suggesting you take your tap water?
I would probably start with my tap before I start with reverse osmosis, because reverse osmosis is usually around a 5-something pH.
Carbon filter your tap water before you add?
It's not going to matter, because when you pour it in there, it's still going to pull all kinds of stuff out. But you can. I mean, you can if you want to.
Second question. Back in the 80s, I was flocking water.
Fracking?
Flocking?
Flocking.
Got a plastic, back start with a plastic 5-gallon bottle. Cut the top off it, put a spigot on there, and you put these drops in it and stirred it, and it all precipitated into a mud in the bottom. But the spigot sat above.
Yeah, you can do
mud.
that with this. It's exactly what you should be doing. Because then the spigot will be above the line.
And then the water debates got going. Distilled versus spring, reverse osmosis, carbon filter, the whole thing, and it's kind of got obfuscated as to what was actually happening with this flocked water.
Yeah, and it just depends on the mineral content that you're using. If it's just 1 or 2 minerals, it's going to throw off. That's why it's important to have the entire matrix of the minerals.
So when you make your water, which you drink day in, day out, describe the process.
What I do is I take, everybody has seen 2.5 gallon, they look like milk jugs. That's number 2 plastic. I don't use anything but number 2 or glass. And I take these jugs because they have this spigot. And I have good well water, so it still has precipitants, but it doesn't have any smell, no chlorine, no fluoride. And I let it sink overnight, and I have 2 of them so that I can rotate out while it's being treating and sinking. I can go to the next one the next day and fill the other one back up, treat it, let it sit overnight, and then I'm using this one. It sinks to the bottom, and then I just get my water right off the jug.
So you don't use your filtration?
I don't, because I don't have really bad water. Now, if I was using tap water, I would use that.
But I don't understand that. You add your adya to the top, let's say one we're using.
Yes.
And then all of a sudden you got the dome, right?
Yes.
Then another filter.
Correct.
Doesn't that filter out the good minerals?
No, because dissolved minerals can't be filtered out.
So the dome and the other filter is not...
You can't filter out. You can't, like, if you ran ocean water through that, it would still be ocean water at the bottom.
What is that filter doing?
It's balancing the energies, but it's also keeping the particulates that precipitate out. It's like going through the layers of nature so that you have that same balance.
And it usually forms a yellow sort of color on the top.
That's the ferric iron that attaches and precipitates.
Can I consume that?
You can. It is inert, but if you don't have to, why do it?
Why do
It's
it?
not necessary. If you're in a survival situation, do what you have to do.
Are you guys still selling the concentrated form?
No, I don't sell directly, no.
No, the concentrated,
We sell the minerals in the bottle that they come in. We don't do it like that. You're dealing with someone specific for that.
Yeah, but you're going to get distributors.
Yeah, I don't sell it like that. I don't sell it like that. I just don't want to confuse the people here on what you guys are doing.
Sorry,
yeah, that's okay.
If you're just using drops of Adya, say a glass of water daily, making it as you go because you don't have that system, do you have to wait before you consume water?
You should, especially if you're using tap water. Some things, just so people know in here, it could take up to 72 hours for a complete precipitation. The majority, 95%, will happen overnight.
I see.
So, but there is a 72-hour completion process.
There's no point going out with a little bottle for your drinking water.
Well, no, but if you're at the restaurant, it's better to use that than nothing because it will get rid of the chlorine right away and neutralize certain things like fluoride.
Okay, so
Yeah, so certain things it is good for, but if you're looking for quality, it's all about quality of life, right?
Yes.
Everybody here agrees with that. Quality of life is important. So what I tell people is, they say, well, should I buy really good water? Good spring water? Yes. Treat yourself. Water should be the thing you invest the most money into, period. Water should be number one. And you'll find out it ends up being your cheapest way to get health.
Yes.
How much could a gallon of water, if you buy our product at full retail, it ends up being 65 cents a gallon of water. By the way, for all of those who don't have our product or are interested, we're doing buy one, get one free today. So everybody understands you can get it at a good price. But even at full retail with the big bottle, it's like 65 cents a gallon of water. That's nothing.
I get a little bit late when you was talking about pH. Every time you said you want to be acid, you're talking about bananas, right?
No, I'm not saying you want to be acid. I'm saying when your body does ramp up the acid, it's because you're deficient.
We're talking about 7.5.
No, your blood can't go above 7.3 or
I mean,
you're
you're
dead.
talking about 6.5 to
7 pH in your
7
water.
pH
In your water. In the water.
In a survival situation, I did a test with the body of water and found the muckiest pond of water that I could find. And I used the minerals and it cleaned them out. All this black stuff down to the bottom, but I noticed that there were still mosquito larvae and something else swimming around. Alive
Yeah, there will be regular microorganisms that can survive non-anaerobic life.
Right.
So those are healthy things.
To eat mosquito
No,
larvae.
what you do. No, the physical, like sand or something physical, like a leaf, will still be in there. That's why you could use like a coffee filter or something like that to easily filter that stuff out.
Okay.
A natural coffee filter will work on that.
Well, yeah, because I mean, you can see them swimming around. I'm like, oh, it's like
Yeah.
those.
But the ones you're seeing swimming are actually aerobic microorganisms that aren't going to hurt you. But I wouldn't suggest drinking a bunch of microorganisms in water. You can easily filter those out with like a coffee filter. But what it's doing is it's getting rid of all the organic waste. So like E. coli, the bacterias that'll actually harm you, stuff like that, like Giardia and things like that. So what did you think of that when you did it in really bad water?
Oh, well, it was interesting because, I mean, it was in the backwoods of Georgia, and it was the dog swim pool. So I thought, I couldn't find a better cesspool than this. I mean, they were covered in muck and poop and everything else. I'm like, this is the best test I could do. And the only thing is, I noticed the things, I'm like, well, I'm not going to drink mosquito larvae, so there's either I have to use more to kill the mosquito larvae, or, like you said, you can either filter.
Yeah, because mosquitoes aren't anaerobic. They're not going to necessarily hurt you if you eat them. Right?
Right.
So it's not like it's invading your system. It could be good protein, I guess. No, but if you did the same thing in a pond, like a dirty pond, you'd notice the same thing. These little tiny, they almost look like little guppies or something. So, yeah, those are normal in a natural body of water.
Okay.
Any other questions?
Madam, I want to know what you thought of adding Soleil to your water.
I'm not very familiar with that product.
It's liquid Himalayan salt.
Himalayan salt
okay.
down to 26%.
Yeah, a mineral salt, any good mineral salt, I would say is good. The difference, I would say, you don't need it if you're using our product because you already have that. In fact, based on what I understand, there's a lot more elements on the periodic table than what they show us. Just so you know, just like in the human body, they only know of about 2,000 enzymes. But there's tens of thousands of human enzymes that they don't know about. So what does that say about minerals? And they just added several, not too long ago, they added several elements to the periodic table. So that tells us that they're obviously not really fluent in the mineral compositions of the earth.
Can you actually see any harm in adding the liquid Himalayan salt to the water? A teaspoon, you know?
I wouldn't think so. Well, a teaspoon might be a lot. I don't know. To be honest with you, I'd have to know the ratios and know.
Right.
I can't just give an answer on something I'm not familiar with. Yeah. But I wouldn't think that it would harm you if you use the proper amount. But then again, if you have something that's exposed to the elements in its salt form, there's a possibility it could also have, like you've seen Himalayan salt, it has like pieces of dirt, pieces of other things, not just salt. So there's that contamination level that you're not really sure.
I've never seen that, by the way.
Well, it depends on where you get it.
Typically, I mean, you take chunks of
Yes.
this and you just let it sit in water for at least 5 hours.
Exactly.
And you dip off the top
Yep.
and throw it in your water. I mean, you're not getting any of the rest of the
Because
residue
everything
sits in the
sits
bottom.
down. Yep.
Same old thing.
Well,
So-
my question, two things, is I think it's like 98% sodium and the rest is minerals.
See, that's
Something
where I'm like, yeah,
something of that nature.
that's a high sodium. I wouldn't
Now-
necessarily recommend that.
Again, I don't know what that translates to once it settles, and I don't know that much about it. But the other thing is, I mean, that much sodium, as long as there's the other mineral bonding or attachment.
It's difficult to say unless you know what form they're
Because
in.
that's the rage right now, is the Soleil, which is just evolution. Salt calls their product Soleil.
Well, they use it to mineralize your mud turning,
Yeah,
to swish it.
yeah, swish it or
Maybe you've heard of Nadine from Living Libations.
I don't know. I've been doing this for 7 years with my product. It's very difficult when you find one that's
Yeah,
works like
that's
this.
the one you wanted.
right,
Yeah.
right. Yeah.
I mean, they tested me on the biomeridian feedback. There was no deficiency whatsoever in my
But
body.
you use Himalayan crystal salt for your food or whatever?
No, I do. Well, yeah, for my food, I do. Yes, to season. Correct, I do. So yeah, I'm glad I heard that last part. I don't use my liquid salts to season my food, but I do. Anybody that does brown rice or you cook, use this water to cook. And also sprouting, use it to sprout and see the difference.
Yeah.
Also growing plants, I like to give everybody this experiment because it's really fun. You take a head of romaine lettuce and you take all the bottom leaves off. You take a glass of our water, you stick it in a clear glass of our water, stick it in the window, and watch within 5 days there'll be roots growing out of the bottom of it.
You know, I ran across this refractometer that measures Brix level
Okay.
in produce, and you just squeeze a little juice out of like a kale stem or whatever, and you put it on this, and it measures the mineral and natural sugar content, which literally I've gone to BM Organics, took one of their avocados and pureed it, put a little on there, and it measured out at 16 degrees Brix, where the Publix one, same softness, same everything, measured out at 10. So in essence, it's 30% higher. Now, my question is, home garden. The idea is to pick your fruit when the Brix level is highest. You can measure that in the leaves. Plant where you pick it. Now, watering with
Yes.
your product.
In Japan, the product's most known in the agricultural side because of the uncanny results. What it does is it increases the photosynthetic capacity of the plant by 30%, meaning that it can take in 30% more light, meaning 30% more everything else. Or we don't even know what the everything else. It could be magnified by even more than that. Strengthens the root structures, the stems, and also what I think is the key, especially for green vegetables like broccoli or green leaf like spinach, is a lot of people don't know this. If you're going to the store and you're buying spinach that's grown even in organic, it doesn't matter, there's high nitrogen. And high nitrogen in humans is carcinogenic. And what Japan has found out is the titanium salt that's in our product will convert these nitrogens into amino acids. So exactly, you know what that means. So yes, it'll increase that dramatically. And it'll also, what that means is your fruits are going to taste better, your vegetables are going to taste better, and they're going to be higher in nutrition. Amino acids are very important.
So you mean if you blend spinach, add some water to it?